4 hours, 200 bullets a minute. One burning villa in the north of Iraq. Inside those walls was a man who once believed he was untouchable. A man who tortured Olympic athletes for losing games, who cruised Baghdad in gold-plated cars with a pistol hanging out the window, who answered to no one but his father. By the time the smoke cleared, he was unrecognizable, torn apart by the very kind of violence he'd spent his entire life inflicting on others. This is the story of how Uday Hussein, the self-declared crown prince of Iraq, met an end so violent, so chaotic, that even the soldiers who witnessed it struggled to describe it. Before we go further, if stories like this hit different, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The War Files digs into the darkest, most brutal chapters of modern conflict that mainstream history skips over. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's go back to where it all began. June 18, 1964. Baghdad, Iraq. A boy is born who will grow up believing the entire country belongs to him. His name is Uday Hussein, firstborn son of Saddam Hussein and his cousin wife Sajida. From the moment he could walk, Uday lived in a universe with no consequences. Guards bowed to him. Teachers were too terrified to discipline him. Relatives whispered his name with a mixture of respect and dread. By the late 1970s, his father Saddam had clawed his way to absolute power, controlling the military, the government, and a secret police apparatus that turned neighbor against neighbor. For Uday, that meant one thing: he was untouchable royalty in a nation ruled by fear. While his younger brother Qusay grew up quiet, calculating, and disciplined, being groomed to run Iraq's intelligence networks, Uday chased something else entirely: pleasure, power, and control. Sports cars, designer suits, nightclubs that shut down for him and him alone. But underneath the glamour was something far darker, a temper that could snap in an instant, and a cruelty that grew more infamous every year. Whispers of brutality followed him everywhere, until even hardened members of his father's regime began to fear him more than they feared Saddam. He had it all: the palaces, the power, the fear of an entire nation. He had no idea it was all about to collapse in flames. March 20, 2003, the skies over Baghdad erupt. The United States, backed by Britain and a coalition of allies, launches Operation Iraqi Freedom. A full-scale assault built on claims that Saddam's regime was stockpiling weapons of mass destruction, defying the United Nations and posing a threat far beyond Iraq's borders. The opening bombardment is so overwhelming it earns a nickname that becomes instantly infamous: Shock and Eye. Explosions rip through government buildings, communication towers go dark. The capital that once symbolized Saddam's untouchable power now shakes under relentless fire. The Iraqi military, worn down by more than a decade of brutal sanctions following the 1991 Gulf War, barely puts up a fight against modern coalition firepower. Cities fall in days, not months. By April 9, just 3 weeks after the first missile struck, Baghdad belongs to the coalition. And then comes the moment the entire world watches live. A massive bronze statue of Saddam Hussein, once an untouchable monument to his power, is dragged down in Firdos Square while Iraqi civilians beat it with their shoes, the ultimate insult in their culture. The palaces come next. Gold chandeliers, marble floors, fleets of luxury cars, rooms stacked with cash. For decades, ordinary Iraqis wouldn't have dared touch a chair belonging to the regime. Now they're stripping the palaces bare with their bare hands. The empire is gone in weeks. And for the first time in his life, Uday Hussein isn't a prince anymore. He's prey. Overnight, everything Uday knew disappeared. No more convoys, no more nightclubs, no more guards bowing at his feet. Now it was safe houses, back roads, and constant fear that the next knock on the door would be his last. Saddam vanished into hiding, moving nonstop to dodge capture. Qusay, always the careful one, relied on a tight circle of loyal bodyguards. But Uday, reckless even now, struggled to adapt to a life where he wasn't in control. The Americans wanted him badly. So badly, in fact, that U.S. military command printed a now famous deck of playing cards featuring the most wanted members of Saddam's regime, a simple visual tool to help soldiers on the ground identify targets. Saddam was the ace of spades, Qusay the ace of clubs, and Uday the ace of hearts. For American troops, it turned a brutal manhunt into something closer to a mission checklist. For the Hussein family, it was proof their time was almost up. Across Iraq, U.S. forces tore through homes, farms, and hideouts, chasing leads. And they were getting help from an unexpected place: the Iraqi people themselves. Years of fear had built up a mountain of resentment, and now people were ready to cash it in. Families who'd lost loved ones in Saddam's prisons, athletes who'd been beaten and humiliated under Uday's personal orders. Some cooperated for money, others wanted revenge. Piece by piece, the net was closing. By the summer of 2003, major regime figures were falling one after another, including Ali Hassan al-Majid, infamous as Chemical Ali, for ordering poison gas attacks on Kurdish villages in the 1980s. Every capture handed U.S. intelligence another piece of the puzzle, and that puzzle pointed north, to the city of Mosul. Mosul had deep tribal loyalties to the Hussein family, making it the perfect place to disappear. It's here that Uday and Qusay find shelter inside a large villa belonging to a relative by marriage. High walls, a fortified gate, guards posted at every entrance. For a while it feels safe. It isn't. Someone close to the family, someone they trusted, sells them out. A tip reaches U.S. intelligence: Saddam's sons are hiding inside that villa in Mosul. After months of dead ends, it's the break American forces have been waiting for. But taking them wouldn't be simple. Everyone involved understood one brutal truth: Uday and Uday Hussein were never going to walk out with their hands up. July 22, 2003, roughly 10:00 in the morning. Mosul is quiet, until it isn't. U.S. forces move in on the villa in a coordinated strike. Leading the operation is Task Force 20, an elite special operations unit, backed by soldiers from the 101st Airborne Division. Within minutes, the property is completely surrounded. No way in, no way out. Loudspeakers blast a demand for surrender. Come out with your hands up. Silence. No doors open. No one moves. Then the villa answers with gunfire. Bullets tear through windows and walls. American soldiers scramble for cover as the quiet residential street erupts into chaos. Inside, it isn't just Uday and Qusay firing back. A third gunman has joined them, Qusay's 14-year-old son, picking up a weapon to fight alongside his father and uncle. 3 generations of the Hussein bloodline trapped in a single house, refusing to surrender. What was supposed to be a raid has just become a siege. The gunfire never stops. Uday and Qusay have turned the villa into a fortress, positioned at different windows, armed with rifles and heavy ammunition, forcing American troops to fight for every square foot. For Uday, this is almost personal. He grew up around weapons, trained by Iraq's top military officers before he was even a teenager. Guns had always meant power to him. Now cornered and desperate, he empties magazine after magazine, buying himself minutes he knows he doesn't really have. American commanders quickly realize this isn't a standard operation. They call in heavier firepower. Apache helicopters thunder overhead. Bradley fighting vehicles roll into position, cannons aimed at the crumbling walls. A quiet Mosul neighborhood transforms into a war zone in real time. Families diving for cover, parents shielding children from stray rounds, civilians fleeing with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Inside, Uday and Qusay know exactly what's coming. The house is surrounded. The firepower outside is overwhelming. There is no escape route left, and still, they choose to keep fighting. To them, death in that villa is better than the humiliation of being dragged out alive in front of the entire world. So the Americans give them exactly what they're asking for: T-2 missiles, designed to punch through tank armor, slam directly into the villa. Entire rooms disintegrate in seconds. Heavy machine gun fire chews through what's left of the walls. Anti-tank rounds tear straight through the structure, shaking the ground for blocks in every direction. And even then, even with the roof collapsing and smoke choking every room, the gunfire from inside doesn't stop. Uday had survived an assassination attempt years earlier, in 1996, when gunmen ambushed his car and put more than a dozen bullets into his body, shattering his spine and leg. He'd lived with a limp and constant pain ever since. But on this day, none of that seemed to matter. Fueled by rage, adrenaline, and the knowledge that this was the end, he kept pulling the trigger. The house that once stood for wealth and untouchable power was now a smoking ruin. After nearly 4 hours of continuous gunfire, rockets and explosions, American forces launched the final assault. Helicopters circle low, soldiers close in from every direction. What remains of the villa takes one last, devastating hit. Inside, Uday Hussein's life ends in the wreckage of his own hideout, shot repeatedly, his body broken by hours of relentless bombardment. The man who once believed he was above every law in Iraq dies bleeding in the rubble of a burning house. There is nothing glamorous about it. No gold, no guards, no fear in anyone's eyes but his own. Qusay dies in that same house. So does his 14-year-old son. 3 generations of the Hussein dynasty wiped out in a single brutal afternoon. When American soldiers finally step through the wreckage, past shattered walls and smoldering debris, they find the bodies exactly where the fighting ended. It isn't just a military victory, it's a symbolic one. For months, rumors had spread across Iraq that Saddam and his sons were still out there, waiting for their moment to return to power. That fear evaporates the instant the news breaks. To prove it to the world beyond doubt, the U.S. military photographs the bodies, takes fingerprints, and confirms their identities through dental records. On July 23, 2003, the announcement goes out, and the images circle the globe within hours. For the countless Iraqis who lived under Uday's cruelty, men who feared for their lives simply for losing a football match, families who whispered his name only behind closed doors, the news brings something they hadn't felt in years: relief. The prince who thought he was untouchable was gone, and the empire built on fear had finally, violently, come crashing down. If this story hit you the way it hit us to research it, smash that like button, and drop a comment telling us which chapter of history you want the war files to uncover next. We've got entire archives of buried, brutal, forgotten history still to come. So hit subscribe and turn on that bell, because you do not want to miss what's next.